Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. Every once in a while in AI, we get one of these companies that just absolutely acts as a lightning rod for fears and concerns about what the future that we're heading into might look like. And the latest of those is this new company, Cluely, that has just emerged with a $5.3 million funding round. To some, this company is an abomination, everything that they are concerned with about in AI. While to others, this is just a straight up preview of the future and one that they think there's much to be excited about. So what the heck is this company and why are people freaking out about this? The company comes from Roy Lee, a 21-year-old founder who went viral last month telling the story of how they got suspended from Columbia for quote-unquote cheating on tech internship interviews. Roy wrote a long viral thread about his experience. Roy and his co-founder had developed an AI tool that could ace LeetCode code testing commonly used in the interview process. The way that Roy described it was a cheating tool for LeetCode code style technical interviews. Now, Roy points out that they had read the Columbia student handbook first and argued that the tool didn't violate any policies. The goal was to go viral. As he put it, use the tool to get offers from top tech companies, film it, and ride the shock factor. Now, there's a whole element about this on the nature of virality and distribution, which we'll get into in a little bit, but where Roy is coming from is very clearly a belief that you have to have distribution first. Now, the tool worked. Lee got offers from Meta, TikTok, Capital One, and Amazon. He even recorded the entire Amazon interview and published it, which led to Amazon leaning on Columbia to, quote, take proper action against Lee, which led to him getting suspended from the company for a year. Now, back then, even before this new company, Cluely, the entire episode was extremely divisive. Some condemned Lee for hacking his way through this interview process. Others scolded him for throwing away his Ivy League education to go viral. But as I mentioned, Roy had come to the conclusion that virality and distribution were more important to his future success than an Ivy League education. And now he has put that logic right back into Cluely, which announced itself this week with a highly viral product ad and a manifesto on the future of AI titled "We Want to Cheat on Everything." The ad features Lee going on a date while using the product, which is depicted as a digital assistant appearing through AR glasses, although Cluely is not actually AR glasses. It helps the young man featured in the ad pretend to be an art aficionado and lie about his age. The tagline is "Invisible AI to cheat on everything." The actual product itself is intended to be used on a desktop rather than in a real-life scenario, but it's being promoted as being undetectable during screen sharing. It listens to audio and can feed the user the information they need in real time to navigate exams, sales calls, and of course, job interviews. Along with the ad, Cluely released a manifesto. It's short enough that I'm just going to read it. They write, "We want to cheat on everything. Yep, you heard that right. Sales calls, meetings, negotiations. If there's a faster way to win, we'll take it. We built Cluely so you never have to think alone again. It sees your screen, hears your audio, feeds you answers in real time. While others guess, you're already right. And yes, the world will call it cheating. But so is the calculator, so is spell check, so is Google. Every time technology makes us smarter, the world panics. Then it adapts. Then it forgets. And suddenly it's normal. But this is different. AI isn't just another tool. It will redefine how our world works. Why memorize facts, write code, research anything when a model can do it in seconds? The best communicator, the best analyst, the best problem solver is now the one who knows how to ask the right question. The future won't reward effort. It'll reward leverage. So start cheating, because when everyone does, no one is. Investor Nikunj Kothari wrote, "Cluely launches this generation's Rorschach test, and boy is he right. This has generated extremely strong feelings, and I think it's actually a really useful conversation." On the one side of the conversation were people like Twitter user Cody Blakeney, who wrote, "Imagine making a Black Mirror short as a product ad." Twitter user Chris, who works on Subsea Robotics, wrote, "I hate this with every fiber of my being, and I think investors should be ashamed of themselves. Cluely is a grotesque distortion of what technology is supposed to enable. It doesn't celebrate innovation, it glamorizes laziness, intellectual theft, and a nihilistic worldview that mistakes shortcuts for success." Referring to the line, "We want to cheat on everything," he says, "This is not a bold vision, it's surrender. Rather than using technology to elevate human capability, Cluely tells you to stop trying altogether. It weaponizes defeatism. Don't strive, don't learn, don't build, just win by outsourcing your mind to a machine. It's not ambition, it's an abdication of responsibility. When it comes to feeding you answers in real time, Chris argues that while this pretends to be about performance, it's built on fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of thinking, fear of wrestling with hard problems. On their assertion that the future won't reward effort, it'll reward leverage, Chris writes, "This is Silicon Valley rot at its worst. Strip away the euphemism and what you're left with is a doctrine that effort, integrity, and expertise are just obsolete. Just find the newest shiny object and ride it to the top." Ultimately, he says this isn't visionary, it's cynical. It asks nothing of the user, no growth, no improvement, no principles, just passive consumption. And in doing so, it turns the human being into a vessel for software prompts. If Cluely wins, the future will be filled with people who can parrot perfect answers they didn't write, understand, or care about. A world of hollow competence, no thinking, no originality, no soul. Quixote Sword writes, "You are moral imbeciles. You compare tools that render certain skills unnecessary, the calculator, to lying about who you are and lying about your own abilities. Why take a walk when you could look at things through VR glasses? Why prepare your own food when you could order a meal delivery? Why raise your own kids when you could pay someone else? Why even have kids when you could pay someone else to have them?" Now, this one was on the original thread, and Roy bit back, saying every single example you cited is something positive that should and does exist in the real world. And he actually goes through point by point. Why take a walk when you could look at things through VR glasses? He says this is good. Everyone loves that VR and computers let you experience nature. This tech is a net positive for society. Even though the tech exists, people still go outside. On food and meal delivery, he says DoorDash and Uber Eats is a net positive for society. And even though the tech exists, people still prepare their own food. On raising your own kids, he says nannies have existed forever and they are net positive for society, etc., etc., etc. He concludes every single thing here is a positive and proof that just because tech enables something different doesn't mean the end of society. Now, part of the issue here, as you can probably tell, was articulated by Colin D., who writes, "Genuinely curious why you chose this go-to-market route versus targeting knowledge workers with a near real-time audio-video screen share AI interface. To me, this would make way more sense for things like pair programming, research, due diligence, accounting, etc." Roy responds, "This is actually our go-to-market. This video is just a viral company launch video." And I think that people are definitely responding to the fact that the example they chose to highlight in this video is a guy who's just straight up lying about who he is to a potential date. I think very reasonably people feel like there's something much more sacred about lying to a potential relationship partner than there is about closing a deal on a sales call. Now, as I mentioned before, Roy is very convinced that virality and distribution are the keys to startup success. In fact, in a LinkedIn post, he talks about that video that got him kicked out of Columbia. He said, "My core thesis is that the only thing that works at this stage is organic virality. You simply don't have the capital or recognition to get attention any other way. Nobody's watching your podcast, nobody's reading your newsletter, nobody's reading your lame-ass tweets, and you can't afford ads. The only thing that matters is top of the funnel, so you must do something that goes viral." Ultimately, he says, build with virality in mind, trust your instincts, and take more risks. And so clearly the bet here is that this very personal example, which they knew would be much more controversial, was engineered specifically to generate the type of conversation it has. And the video's been viewed nearly 10 million times at this point, so it's hard to argue that it wasn't effective, at least if the metric of success is just attention. Now, there were also people who came to Cluely's defense. Signal writes, "What people don't understand is that cheating in its rawest form is just an exploit. And exploits exist because systems are imperfect. When people cheat, they are not necessarily breaking rules. They're revealing where the rules were already broken. It's a stress test. It's adversarial R&D. In school, if everyone's cheating, maybe the system is incentivizing memorization over understanding. Cheating is an important feedback loop for society, for humanity. The real danger isn't cheating, it's pretending the system is just fine when it clearly isn't. This is why software like this is insanely interesting. It reveals societal truths and helps us, paradoxically, be a better version of ourselves." Sam Green writes, "Many will call real-time access to LLMs cheating. Eventually we'll call it what it really is, intelligence amplification. It starts with an AI that can process visuals and audios from your computer, but it'll eventually escape that containment barrier and bleed into most situations in life like the internet did over the last few decades. For years, folks have flocked to search engines for their daily work and life challenges. For example, think of the joke about coding actually being 90% Googling. Today, thanks to LLMs, we've already witnessed the time gap between what would have been a Googled problem and a search result solution shrink to almost instantaneous. I expect this trend to accelerate. Intelligence amplification is often defined as the augmentation of human cognitive abilities through the seamless integration of technology. Much like the world adapted to computers and later smartphones, we'll adapt to intelligence amplifying technology that instantly orients us to anything we're looking at or listening to. But he says, until you can download skills and memories directly into your brain, approaching intelligence amplification through the lens of cheating has limitations. You can't cheat real expertise, discerning taste, great communication skills, and critical thinking ability. In fact, those qualities become even more valuable as this technology becomes widely adopted. And I think the key to having a sort of middle-of-the-line take about Cluely is to be able to do a thing that they're not actually doing in their manifesto and in their ad, which is distinguishing between different contexts and different examples of where this sort of so-called cheating might and might not be appropriate. Writer John Stokes wrote a piece called In Defense of Cluely.com, and he sums up his thoughts in the section called The Demo is Dumb, but the Promise is Real. He writes, "So the kid in the demo was trying to use his AI-powered smart glasses to solve a problem that apparently he has. A total lack of what the kids call Riz. I, a father of 3, do not have this young man's particular problem. I do not lack Riz, obviously, and even if I did, Riz is no longer the critical path of anything I'm trying to obtain. But I do have other, more dad-specific problems. For instance, I am a dad who sometimes has to do things to cars, like change the windshield wiper or check a fluid level or interpret a dash light or put some chains on tires. This usually involves holding my phone in one hand, with YouTube playing and doing the car thing with the other hand. I also have to do things around the house that involve hot water heaters, breaker boxes, generators, and many other tasks that, again, involve a mixture of YouTube, PDFs from manufacturer websites, tools, and frustration. I want the Cluely glasses real bad for these kind of tasks. I want to cheat on every single upgrade, repair, replacement, hack, and monkey patch that I do as a homeowner and automobile driver. But then it gets really interesting, and John continues. If I owned a factory, I would want employees to cheat, quote unquote, with Cluely as they worked the machines and did all their troubleshooting and QA. If I owned a restaurant, I would want newly hired waiters to use Cluely to identify by name any repeat customers and their recent orders. And I would also want to have some scripts ready for them, just like in the video, about the specials and what to do in situations where the food is late and the customer is mad and so on. I could make up examples all day. It doesn't even take much imagination. AI augmented AR has tons of obvious potential to yield massive savings in employee training and onboarding in many categories of businesses. Cluely is ultimately just one example of a new category of AI-enabled tools that will change how we live and work. Maybe Cluely itself will go bust. I have no idea if the founder knows what he's doing or not. But something like this has the potential to make all of our lives a little easier and to instantly upskill many types of employees. So I think Cluely is kind of great, or at least points the way to something great. I could certainly do without all the obvious scumbaggery on display in the launch, but all of that aside, there's definitely something here. So here's to Cluely, or at least to the virtuous practical version of it that's inevitably coming to market. And I think this is really key here. One, I completely agree with John that this category of tooling is absolutely inevitable. Real-time, immediate information accessibility is just going to be a part of our lives. It will be incumbent upon society to decide where and in what ways we think that's appropriate. Obviously, it's going to exist on a spectrum. On the one end of the spectrum, let's take sales calls. Do we really think that there are a lot of people out there who have some huge moral issue with a sales representative having better real-time information about the customer they're trying to convert? Even if the customer knew they had access to that, the whole thing that they're looking for out of a sales relationship is being understood. If there are tools that allow them to be understood faster without them gabbing as much, that's probably a net thing for everyone involved in the exchange. On the other end of the spectrum is the example chosen by Cluely to highlight, which is real, important human relationships. And I think this is the one where if you surveyed 100 people, the biggest majority of them would not be super down with this. Reducing important human relationships to trivial games to be won or lost is a pretty sure sign that someone hasn't had really important relationships that go beyond those first couple interactions. In other words, getting to a second date may be a win, but if you think like that, you probably don't realize that you're not actually just playing a game. It's the middle that's going to be harder, honestly. Now, certainly Roy and his co-founders might have a different take on those human relationships, and I think that we can't discount how wildly generational value changes could happen in this new world. But given all of Roy's comments on virality, let's take it for granted that he is just trying to engineer conversation, and that he might even agree that on the spectrum of use cases, this isn't really where Cluely wants to focus. Okay, so we have large consensus that sales are fine, but that relationship cheating is not, at least to the extent that anything can have consensus in this world. What's really going to be complicated is everything in the middle. The original cheating that inspired this whole thing, these coding exams, are a great example of where the messy middle exists. On the one hand, these firms are genuinely trying to understand someone's capability to do the type of work that they're going to be called upon to do. However, the person who's doing the cheating is basically demonstrating how they're going to do that work in practice with the help of LLMs. And in that case, we get to the very complicated area of how much it matters not just to have the skill, but to have learned the skill the hard way. I guess my sense is that over time, it seems unlikely to me that we'll fully lose the value of skills acquisition, but it is going to change and in ways that I don't fully understand yet. What's also true, though, is that society and markets are self-correcting, and that to the extent all these things that some people are freaking out about become norms, there will be other market actors who run in completely the opposite direction and give people the option, at least, to go it in a different way. Completely separate from the Cluely conversation, I noticed investor Gokul Rajaram post on both LinkedIn and Twitter recently a request for startups for interview centers. Gokul writes, "Here's a prediction. The need to remotely screen scores of candidates, coupled with the increasingly rampant cheating on remote interviews, is going to lead to a startup or startups building out clean room interview centers where candidates will not have access to any aids, tools, or AI agents to help them. There will be human proctors overseeing the interviews. They will crop up in major metros to start with, but then there will be one within a few miles or kilometers of every town, similar to SAT or GRE test centers. Pricing will be pretty simple. Per candidate fee might be higher for higher paid technical roles, since cheating will be more sophisticated for those roles. This is an extremely successful investor. Gokul's on the board of Pinterest and DoorDash, who's basically watching this whole conversation around Cluely and saying, while all you yuckles debate about whether this is happening, I'm just going to make money from the startup that comes to help calibrate the downside from this. So I don't know, man. The world is going to get weirder. There's going to be more, not less Cluleys. Ultimately, I'm optimistic that we'll figure it out. But I do think being loud about our opinions about these things is a part of that figuring it out. So whether you love this or loathe this, keep saying so publicly. And hey, if nothing else, maybe you'll end up on this show one day. For now, that's going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Until next time, peace.